to Multifamily Live.
I'm Yarusi.
And I'm Jason Yarusi. Our mission is to help you unlock your full potential as a multifamily real estate investor.
So you can do more deals, bigger deals, with less stress, keep more profit, and free up your time.
Multifamily doesn't have to be a mystery. It's time to go live.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello, and today I've got Jason Yarusi on the show. Jason, welcome.
Hey, Chris. Great to be here. How you doing?
Great to have you here. I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Awesome, man. Psyched to be.
Awesome. We got a chance to connect a few months ago at this point. I was on your show as well. So super excited to have you on my show to share your knowledge and wisdom with my audience. But before we get started, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself real quick for us?
Yeah, sure. Jason Yarusi, we have a private equity firm, Yarusi Holdings, where we invest in multifamily properties across a few markets. We have about 800 plus units spread across 10 assets, valued a little above about $85 million in real estate. We focus on properties that are underperforming, whether it's on the property side or the management side, and look to just put in operational efficiencies and capture on a bunch of dynamics of the property where we can really just make it a great community to live, and that complements helping our investors achieve incredible returns.
Awesome. And how long ago did you get into real estate? Like, when did you first step your toe into the world of real estate?
So multifamily exclusively was 2016 on a small level, 2017 on the big level. And before that was 2013, 14 was when we first made the foray into real estate as a sector.
Cool. Very cool. I always love to see the trajectory, because so many times it's not like it took 50 years to do. You can actually achieve this success relatively quickly, 5, 10, 15 years. You can do some amazing things if you just focus and, you direct your energy in a certain direction. But I know 100%. Like we talked about before I hit record, though, we're going to talk a lot about mindset stuff, and just, we can take it any direction you want to go in. But I mean, maybe where would you like to start us off at? Like, what's something that maybe you've had a breakthrough recently, or something you're struggling with? I'd love to talk about any of that stuff.
It's always the point of just trying to find the next piece to the puzzle, and that just comes taking action. And I know, we were having conversations with a couple of people, and I get frustrated because I can't do it, right? But to do it becomes, or I can't figure it out, right?
Yep.
But there's usually not like this magical answer to the overall question of life. And where we get just kind of stepping back from the ledge is that when we start understanding that it takes just taking that first step to figure out a better question to get ourselves to that next answer, that's when we start making traction. So so many times it's that, just throw your hands up in the air, like, that person might be lucky, or they were in the right place at the right time. No, they were just taking action and putting themselves in a position for when luck pawns in front of them, that they're ready to act, right? And where most get stuck or fail is that they just ultimately look at the overall big picture. It's like, I have to, I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and you get so scared that you're about getting to the top, but you forget to look at the first step. Like, well, let me figure out, planes to get there, or just a guide or boots, right? We instead of looking at that first actual step to get us some better information, we get so scared, right? And that's like the New Year's resolution, where it's such a lofty thing, but because we have no traction, no built-in need or want of it, that most, 88, 90% of people fail because it's so far from who they are, because they haven't looked at a logical path. It's just the end goal and not the journey. That's the focus.
That's so true, because it is overwhelming when you look at the big picture and you see all the things you have to do. It almost makes you not want to start at all, right? I think that's what you're kind of hinting at here. But also the fact that it's a never-ending puzzle. We're always looking for that next piece. How do we make it a little better? Maybe we found something that works, but we can improve it. So do you have a next puzzle piece that you're kind of focusing on right now, or do you have your systems pretty dialed in your own business right now?
There's always growth, right? So right now it's continuing to scale in our processes. So we have a mix of everything from 32 unit to, actually a 24 unit now, 24 unit to a 284 unit, right? In terms of sizing. And our goal is to continue to scale up to larger assets, right? So now the puzzle piece is figuring out the right question to get ourselves consistently in front of 200 to 300 unit deals, right? Because it's the evolution of where we're at the process. So that's something that we're continuing to work for. And it's the same business model. However, there's different pieces, right? You're going to have a different brokers that you talk to. You're going to have potentially a larger investor pool that you're going to focus and work with here. You may have a different buyer and seller pool that you're working with right here, just based on the size and scope of the assets, right? So you're looking at the same approach, but now I won't say contorting it, but narrowing, rechanging your focus. So you're in front of the right people to get you closer to that right path to get there.
Awesome. And I would imagine that takes a lot of journaling and planning and really thinking like, is this actually the direction that we want to go in? Or do we want to pull back the reins a little bit and kind of focus a little bit more on what we actually are doing now? So it's great. How often do you do that goal setting and maybe revisiting what your vision looks like? Is that quarterly or annually?
In the part, every 2 to 3 months, we're constantly looking at where we're going, right? We don't have a set date that we do it consistently, and we could definitely do that better. However, from a point of our focus, it's just sometimes when we put the goal up there, we don't know if we want it unless we start after it. So right now, the 200 or 300 unit buildings, in our mind, we need to take the steps to figure out what is it about the process that maybe we're lacking at, or we're retreating from, or we're not going the right way to get to, right? That's part of each goal is that, okay, you can have a goal, but you have to take and commit to finding ways to get yourself closer to that goal. 100%. And even if you don't reach it, it might still be a win, right? It might still be a win. And because sometimes if you're, I want to have, let's just use money, easy reference. I want to have $20 million. I want to make $20 million next year. And you've only made 50,000. Well, if next year you make $5 million, I would consider that probably a still pretty awesome win.
Pretty good. Yeah. Pretty good progress.
That's like, if you think of that around any goal that's out there in life, is that if you go after a goal and you may not reach it, you have to celebrate your accomplishments because that's what you built upon. And maybe the next year you quadruple the goal that you didn't reach this year. But if you just say, I didn't reach the goal and just throw it all the way, well, that's where it's like that 2 feet from goal philosophy is that you're putting in the work, but you're not allowing it to you're planting the seed, but you're not allowing it to grow.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that quote, if you shoot for the moon, you'll land among the stars. So maybe you don't get all the way to the moon, right? But at least you're hitting amazing goals. And as long as you're improving year over year and you're getting better than your previous self, I would definitely count that as a win. What I think a lot of us do is we set some crazy goal. Like, we get into entrepreneurship and we're like, okay, I want to make $1 million next year. And you make like 30 grand your first year trying to do real estate commissions or flips or whatever. You lose money on a deal, you make some money on the next deal, but the next year you break 6 figures. Like that is measurable progress. And well, if you compare it against your goal of $1 million, you look like a quote unquote failure. Oh, I'm not that good. But look at your last year, look at your previous self. You are, whatever the percentage is, you're dominating your goals. Maybe not necessarily the ones that you set initially, but you're doing better than a lot of your peers who maybe never even set those goals to begin with. Yeah,
we get so stuck in the short term.
Yeah.
Forget about the long term, right? Because it's easy to just look at yesterday or today, but even on things that were a quote unquote hard for you today, we could probably all come back 3, 5, 7, 10 years ago to look at something that was like so beyond, so difficult that we could never accomplish. And then you just do it, right? And you have that breakthrough. And now today it's something that completely is the easiest thing for you to do.
It's
right.
Crazy
like a kid riding a bike can't do it to doing it within a day, or, learning to drive. Like it would be like unimaginable that it's something you do without thinking today. Right. Well, we all have that with other difficulties in our life as well.
Yeah, those are great examples because, it takes time. You don't just get behind the wheel and start driving. You got to go to driver's ed or maybe have an instructor, have your parents teach you. And of course, even then, there's a lot of people who aren't that great at driving after a few years on the highway. They maybe need a refresher course. But what's been one of the biggest setbacks or challenges that you guys have faced when growing your operation that you'd like to share? Maybe a lesson that you learned from it and what happened, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, so I think we'll go on real estate is that as we evolved to where we are today, it was that just learning the process, right? Because we always assume that, more is better, right? So if we're doing all these different asset classes of real estate and having all these income streams, like that must be the way, right? Okay, that must be perfect. But what you find here is that you say you're doing all these things here, you can't do them all great. You're not positioned to do them all great if you're doing them yourself. Mm-hmm. So we were doing a lot of different things good, but it really took to step back and say, okay, we're doing wholesaling, we're doing flipping, we're doing Airbnbs. We had small rentals at that time. Everything was going good, okay, but is that what you want? right? And so when we found large multifamily, we had to detract from what we were doing to get better in the one space. Because diversifying, I get all the points here, but when you look at successful people, they may have a lot of successes in a lot of different fields, but typically they started in one arena. Yeah. And they were able to get that growth and get that distraction going and then build upon that. Because when we start in all these different arenas, we don't have the foundation to be able to have the strength and success built out there across all these patterns that we can go and apply that same success to multiple points because we're learning, right? We're learning all these different fields. It's like investing in multifamily is that I always teach, like, start with one market so you can understand the flow, understand how to find partners, find team members, find brokers, build a team, underwrite properties. Because if you try and do that across 20 different properties or 20 different markets, you're trying to do so much here that it's hard for you to get the process down because you're all over the place in your focus.
That's really good advice. Have you read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan? I
have. Yeah. That's a great book. So yeah, my wife used to be a Keller Williams agent, and great book, but the same thing here too. It's you have to really just hone in on the most important thing. Absolutely. Because everything else falls in place. And it's part of the balance there is that we all think that we need to be balanced in 73 things, right? But if you drop them all, there's going to be 2 or 3 that you realize you can't drop. Yeah. Right. So it's like, okay, I take my kids to school in the morning and then, okay, I got to pick up my kids here. I should get milk. I have a call that has to be made or this deal won't close or, I need to, do the laundry here. You may not get the milk in the laundry, but you got to pick up your kids and you got to get the deal closed. Right. And so the other two, like, it's not going to be the end of the world if you don't do them. Right. But so many times we're like, I have to do everything. And then you mess up, you get late to get the pick up the kids, the deal, it gets really tough because you can make the call later, forget some of the paperwork because we're trying to do all these things that don't necessarily have to happen to complete your day. Yeah.
And that's one thing I noticed in real estate as well, because when you're trying to get focused and people say, yeah, I'm going to do real estate, you kind of talked about some of them that you were doing, Airbnbs and wholesaling and flips. I mean, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And even within real estate itself, while it sounds like you're just focusing on real estate, you can still be doing 73 different things and you're kind of doing them all okay, but none of them are amazingly great. And so I love how you said you had to step back from doing all that different stuff to really focus on the multifamily. And another nugget there that you wrote down, that I wrote down, was that you mentioned to start with one market to understand the flow. Because if you do start, for those listening, whatever you're trying to do, if you're like, hey, we're going to launch this in 10 different markets, that might be different demographics and different areas and different population sizes, and things can be completely different, right? If you're flipping houses, for example, that's very market specific, like a home in Colorado versus a home in Texas. One has basements, one doesn't, right? That's completely different. And so everything about that process would be different as well. So it sounds like you guys have gotten extremely clear on what you're going after and figuring out that model and documenting all your processes. Is that correct? Are you guys really big on systems and processes?
It's like, I'm thinking like the Olympics right now. It's like, if you were like, hey, I'm going to be a future Olympian in sports. And it's like, what does that mean? It's like,
what does success look like?
Yeah. Like the same thing with real estate. I'm going to do real estate. Like, what does that mean? Like, you're going to be a realtor, you're going to do tax liens. Like, what are you going to do? Right. And so, and when you get to the point here, it's our processes. We're continuing to build on our process. So as we bring people into our ecosphere, we're continuing to try and find ways to make this better, more efficient, easier, whether it's for us from the operations side, from the investors, from the investor platform side, to the people who live in the apartment buildings, right? And that's the goal here, is to make this a cleaner transition, right? So we want our investors to have a great experience. We want the people to live in the building to have a great experience. We want everybody holistically to have a great experience, but it takes learning the steps to make this a better point, because our process, having that perfect game plan and then starting and realizing the game plan is pointless and you got to throw it away in 3 minutes. Right. Yeah. And so that's part of here, is that as we continue to grow and build, because, at 50 units or 100 units, maybe we're okay with one process. But as you start getting to cuts of, 800 to 1,000 units, well, okay, so we need another process, right? Because it's you hit that point where you can plateau for a while with your processes, but you have to grow and evolve. And if not, then you're going to be stuck where you are, because you're going to have a lid on your growth.
Yeah. And how did you guys break through that lid? I mean, I'm assuming you're part of mastermind and coaching and things like that. Have you networked with investors across the country, or was there one certain program that you can attribute a lot of your success to? I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
It's a combination of each. Is that the multifamily community is awesome. It's a really open community. You can ask a lot of questions, you can learn a lot. And you have to see how other people are doing things so you can understand what can work for you, right? Because there's a lot of people who've done this successfully for many years and for decades and generations. So you don't have to recreate the wheel, but you're going to be a piece of the puzzle, and you have to figure out what's that piece of the puzzle. Right. So we're being the sponsors driving the deals, where there might be people who are just in investor relations or just in lead finding or just in underwriting, right? Because that's where they can succeed, right? Or excel. So you have to understand where you can fit in the process, and then understand how you can grow to be the best fit either in your own team or for somebody else's team.
Okay, cool. So are you collaborating currently? You're kind of one of the pieces of the puzzle, and you have someone else running shop on doing the underwriting, somebody else finding the deals. Is that kind of how you operate, where you guys focus on one piece?
It's pretty much, unfortunately, at some points, I won't say unfortunately, is that we've been the driver on the majority of our deals, and we have a couple other deals that we've had team members bring into us, and then we carry on that point. Asset management or running the operation of the deals are a strong point, also on the capital side. So we focus a lot in that. And then at times we'll partner with partners who potentially bring us the deal, but may not have the bandwidth to understand how to close the deal, set up the deal, structure the deal, operate the deal, fund the deal, and we can carry on that capacity right there. But out of the gate, like our first couple deals, we actually did them all by ourselves, which is crazy at the point here, and I'll say by ourselves, and we'll put that in quotations, because we did have people who were around us, mentors, and that had helped us understand the process, right? So they weren't signing on the loan docs, talking to investors, but they were helping us stay on the highway, right? So we didn't veer off, into the guardrail, right? And so that part of the process is that knowing the big steps, but having people around you that when certain things come up to keep you close enough on track that you can keep towards the destination. And as we've now continued to scale, we've found deals through other partnerships, through other points, as we've mentioned here. And that's allowed us to be able to use our strengths to our advantage here and not complicate it when we're trying to do so many roles.
Yeah, it's helpful to have those people. I think you said, so to keep you from going into the guardrail or even into oncoming traffic, even worse, if you are trying to do everything on your own and you don't have that resource to go to. Same thing with any aspect of real estate, any business, there are people who have already done it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I love that as well, because so many times people feel like they have to figure it out, or, yeah, I know this marketing method works, but I'm going to try something else. And of course, things do work from time to time. You can have a breakthrough, but you may be going in the wrong direction if you're not following kind of the blueprint that's been set out by experts who have decades of experience, and they've done this for generations possibly. So I found that to be true in real estate in general, is like, so many people are open, they share, they don't mind giving you everything under the hood for the most part, what tools they're using, systems, resources, lenders, all that kind of stuff. And so 100%. The more you network, the more kind of opportunities come across your desk, I would imagine.
Yeah. And it's part of that is that there is going to continue to be people that we can help and that will help us, right? And it's that self-serving community where if you can put out, the good word, it always comes back to you. Right. And so Absolutely. With multifamily, the deals, and even if it's not a deal that we can help with, we want to make sure we can help them or provide some guidance to allow them to succeed. Right. So if they're in, I don't know, we're not in New Mexico, but if they're focused in New Mexico, it's not going to be the right opportunities for us, but we may be able to give them some guidance to keep them from hitting the guardrail. Right. So you can pass it along.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the reciprocity, what goes around comes around. If you just help somebody, they're going to remember that and they're going to send somebody your way, possibly in the future, referrals, connections, things like that. I'm curious to know, I know we've got a couple of minutes left, but how does your week look now? Like, what are the things that you focus on? Do you have a couple of set goals that you look to do every single week, or does it kind of vary depending on the calls that you need to make or the deals that you're working on?
Deal and offer, right? So do enough action to get enough deals in front of us that we can underwrite enough deals to present an offer, right? And
Perfect.
So that's the goal from that point. And then we have weekly setup calls with each of the property management companies, third-party property management companies to review the operations of the property, right? So those are always the core. So it's finding new and making sure we're performing with existing, right? Awesome. And so those are our two key points. And then from that point, one of the new goals we put on the board is to up, we get a number of investor leads a week to continue to push to up that level of how many investor leads we're getting a week. So that's one of the new goals on the point here that we're going to put focus on, because as we go into these bigger deals here, we're going to talk to more investors, right? Because they're going to be raising more capital here. So we need to continue to open our bandwidth to be available to talk to more people.
Very cool. Very cool. And it's so important to just have those goals up there. I think I saw you kind of glance to the left. You probably have them right there front and center on a whiteboard or something, right? So you can look at them constantly throughout the day, throughout the week. And anytime you're getting distracted, you just glance over there and you're like, hold on a second. This thing that I'm about to do does not align with our ultimate goals this week. So what are any last key takeaways that you'd like to share with our audience? Any big nuggets that you've learned this year that you'd like to impart to the listeners?
It's never going to be a perfect destination or a perfect route to get you to where you want to go, but it is going to happen if you keep after it, right? And most of the time we find that there's such a big gap from where we want to go, but typically you're not as far from where you want to go and you're not as far from where you were, right? And so it happens in a big way, but it starts with our mind. And if you can put the focus into just continuing to show up and not thinking that you have to do these huge jumps every day, but you just have to do little pieces each day. And if you keep consistent here, instead of saying, I'm going to designate 16 hours to real estate today, when your mind's, to learning to flip or something, when that's just impossible. Maybe, but could you do an hour or 17 minutes? And could you do that consistently every day? 17 minutes every day for the next 30 days and see what happens, right? That might prove that you are able to get yourself out of where you are, taking a ton of action just by consistently showing up each day.
That's amazing advice. So many people, I think about the 3-hour workout in one day and you're only doing it once a week. It's way better to just do a 15, 20-minute workout 4 or 5 times a week instead of trying to do it all on a Saturday, which won't be as sustainable. You're going to burn out. You won't feel motivated. And so we really underestimate how far that can go if we're just spending an hour a day. Everyone listening, 1 hour a day, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. Just stay consistent at your craft. So Jason, thank you so much for your time and for that advice. Of that advice. Where can our audience go to connect with you guys, to learn more about what you're up to and to follow your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having me on the show here. You can go over to yarusiholdings.com, YARUSI holdings.com. You can find everything about us, our team, our podcast, which we were lucky enough to have you on the show. So go back and listen to that episode as well. So definitely.
Awesome. I will drop all of that in the show notes, and I really appreciate your time once again, Jason. It's been awesome connecting with you here today.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Take care. We'll talk soon, man.